Hello guys, how we all doing today? Welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to talk about OSAS. Now, I started to ponder about OSAS just a little bit ago, and I was like, I should probably make a video on this because this is obviously a serious topic. It has to obviously do with soteriology, so it's a serious matter. And I am particularly wanted to bring up Hebrews chapter 10 because I watched a video from a particular YouTuber, a Christian YouTuber, and he basically made Hebrews chapter 10 seem like as if it was not referring to believers, it was referring to unsaved people, right? And obviously I disagree with that. Clearly it's not referring to unsaved people, it's referring to people that were saved but fell out of grace or departed from the faith. So we're gonna go ahead and do a little Bible study on this. I'm gonna show you guys the context of the entirety of verse 26 of chapter 10 and onwards until probably chapter 11. I'll probably read chapter 11 verse 8. Yeah, I'll do that and I'll show you guys exactly um what this chapter is talking about. Because there are 3 points that people like to bring up. One, this is not talking about believers, which is wrong. Number two, this is talking about believers, but it's not referring to them going to hell to be burnt up. That is also wrong. And number three, this is we should not make this a broad um, situation about sin. This is only particularly talking about animal sacrifices, which is 100% correct. And it actually helps me that you're saying that. So let's go to Hebrews chapter 10, and I'm going to show you guys exactly why I say this is referring to believers leaving the faith. Oh, by the way, the glasses, uh, don't focus on it too much. And also, I got the do-rag on because the hair is not hairing on top there, so forgive me for that. And the glasses, just don't pay too much attention to it. I had to stick it with crazy glue, so or construction glue, so just deal with it, okay? I don't have glasses. I can't see without them, so I have no other option, and I look weird without my glasses on. So let's get to it. So we start from verse 26. This is the typical verse that most Christians who believe in forfeiting salvation will bring up, right? For if we go on sinning deliberately after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sin, but a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. Now, people will say that one, this is not talking about saved people that were in the faith and left. This is talking about Gentiles and heathens, right? And there's the second one that this is talking about this is talking about people that were saved or that are saved, but this is not referring to them burning in hellfire. This is just talking about them being harshly judged. This is really bad because this is not referring to that at all. This is clearly talking about someone leaving the faith, because if we continue to read in verse 28, it says, anyone who has set aside the law of Moses dies without mercy on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much worse punishment do you think will be deserved by the one who has trampled the underfoot of God and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified and has outraged the Spirit of grace? So number one, when we read this, what is going on here? We just read that it said, anyone who has set aside the law of Moses dies without mercy on the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. So he's setting a standard for people who followed the law of Moses. People who followed the law of Moses were punished harshly. Imagine, now he says in verse 29, how much worse. He's referring to people like us, Christians. How much worse of a punishment do you think will be deserved by the one who has trampled the underfoot of God? So this is not only talking about them disobeying God. This is talking about people who has trampled the underfoot of the Son of God, and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified, and has outraged the Spirit of grace. What does this mean? This means that he not only disobeyed the Lord, but he willfully chose to trample the feet of the Son of God, to profane the blood that by which he was sanctified. How can someone that was not a believer be sanctified? That makes no sense. Clearly, this is referring to someone that was saved and has outraged the Spirit of grace. How could this be someone that is not saved, yet they trampled the Spirit of grace and the Spirit of grace, the blood by which he was sanctified? Not only did he trample the Spirit of grace or outrage the Spirit of grace, he profaned the blood that sanctified him. Now, if we continue in verse 30, this is not really too important. It says, vengeance is mine. Now again, when we read vengeance is mine, I will repay. Wasn't that referring to unsaved people or unrighteous people? Because this was in the Old Testament. He's clearly talking about people who do not love the Lord, who do not obey the Lord. This is clearly who God is referring to. People who do not honor him, people who do not worship him, people who are not of his fold. So, this again, pretty clear, but not too important, because if we continue reading down here, but recall the former days when, after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with suffering, sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partnered with those who treated. For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your properties, since you knew that you yourself had a better possession, a possession, and an abiding one. When we get to chapter 11, verse 8, I'm going to show you something very interesting. But again, it's going to come right back to this right here. It's all going to connect. Therefore, and this is very important. But right here, before I get to this part, from verse 32 to verse 34, it clearly shows that you will have a moment of endurance, that you will have to endure something. To what? Because you know you'll have a better possession and an abiding one. I think we know what that possession is, and I think we know what it means by abiding. But let's keep reading verse 35. In verse 35 it says, therefore do not throw away your confidence. Why should I keep my confidence? Which has a great reward. Wait. So if I don't throw away my confidence, I will receive a reward? A great reward? That's odd. What does that mean? But I thought regardless we were going to get the great reward. I didn't think that we would have to have confidence to receive the reward. Why can I not throw away my reward if I'm eternally secure? That doesn't really make sense to me. But okay, let's keep reading. For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. For a little while, and the coming of one will come and will not delay, but the righteous shall live by faith. What is faith? Let's keep reading. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. What does that mean, that my soul has no pleasure in him? Do we recall back in Matthew when Jesus got baptized? What did the Father tell Jesus? This is my beloved Son, by which who I am well pleased. Why was he well pleased? Because Jesus did the will of the Father. Everything that Jesus did was of the will of the Father. And at the transfiguration, what did the Lord repeat? This is my Son, my beloved Son, by which who I am well pleased. Why did the Father say that? Because Jesus did the will of the Father. God the Son did the will of the Father. So let's go back over here again. So basically, if he has no pleasure in you, it's because you are not doing his will. Again, if we go back to the beginning of it, if you go deliberately sinning after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sin, but a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. If your soul has no pleasure, if the Lord has no pleasure in you, you are an adversary to him. Let's keep reading. But we are not one of those who shrink back and are destroyed. What happens to the adversaries? Like, genuinely, what happens to the adversaries? What happens to them? They are thrown in the fire. They are destroyed. They are burnt. They are consumed by the flames of hell. But of those who have faith, and preserve their souls, who are those who do not shrink back? Those who have faith and preserve their souls. Now again, why do you have to preserve your soul? You're eternally secured. You don't have to preserve your soul. You're eternally secured. There's no need to preserve your soul if you're eternally secured. Again, another major problem there. You're going to have to answer this for me. Now again, to the point. What is faith? What is faith? Here's where we go to chapter 11, verse 8. Now, I could start from the beginning, but it basically says the same thing as verse 8, but verse 8 is much more clearer to me. Now, let's read verse 8. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive an inheritance. This reminds me of something I read earlier, but let's keep going. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, and as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs to him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Now, we know that in context, he's talking about Jerusalem, the promised land, the Holy Land. But what was the faith that Abraham had? The faith that he had caused him to what? The faith that he had caused him to obey. The faith that he had caused him to obey the Lord. That's why James said that faith without works is dead. Faith causes you to obey. If you do not obey, you don't have genuine faith. You have a false faith, a dead faith. Faith without works is dead. So we go back to this. So that is basically what faith is. Faith is what causes you to obey. If you don't have faith, you won't obey. If you don't have genuine faith, you'll be lukewarm. You're not going to be a true faithful believer. Faith is causing me to believe right now. Faith is causing me to believe, to obey the Lord, to do his commands, to spread the gospel. That is what I am doing right now. Through faith, I am doing his will. So let's keep reading. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of the promise, in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs to him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundation, whose designer and builder is God. Now, this is where we get to the spicy stuff. Abraham was promised a earthly land, a earthly city, which foundation designer and builder is God. Abraham was promised that by God, that he was going to inherit this land. But if we go back to verse 32 until verse 34, and what does it say? But recall the former days, when after you were enlightened, you endured a hard struggle with suffering, and sometimes being publicly exposed to reproach and affliction, and sometimes being partnered with those who treated. For you had compassion on those in prison, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, of their earthly inheritance. Since you knew that you yourself had a better possession, an abiding one. What is that? What is that promise? What is that reward? We just read something about rewards. Oh, verse 35. Therefore, do not throw away your confidence, which has a great reward. For you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, again, faith causes you to do the will of God, you may receive what is promised. Yet a little while, and the coming one will come and will not delay. But the righteous shall live by faith. Again, faith causes you to obey. And if he shrinks back, my soul has no pleasure in him. If you shrink back, meaning if you lose faith, if you do not endure, the Lord will not have pleasure in you. But we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls. They preserve their souls for what? For the reward, which is why you need confidence, which gives a great reward. For you have need of endurance. Why? To preserve your souls for the promise that you will receive. So again, this entire chapter has nothing to do with unbelievers. This is clearly talking about believers. Even when you say, oh, this is referring to animal sacrifices, not sin as a whole. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I agree with you. You're just proving my point. Yes, they're doing something willfully that goes against God's will, which is contrary to the faith that you're supposed to have. So if you do something contrary to the faith that you're supposed to have, which in this case is animal sacrifices, what is going to happen to you? What is going to happen to you? There will remain no sacrifice for sins, but a fearful expectation of judgment and a fury of fire that will consume the adversaries. And what will that fury of fire do? What will that fury of fire do? But we are not one of those, in the same context it is talking about these people who shrink back. What do you mean by shrink back? Those who have trampled the underfoot of the Son of God and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified. The same he The same he that Paul is referring here. We are not one of those. We are not one of those. And if he shrinks back, what happens? And what did that person do again? He trampled the underfoot of the Son of God and has profaned the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified, and has outraged the spirit of grace. All of this chapter 10 and 11, and even before chapter 10, all of this goes together in one, completely destroying the argument that you cannot lose, that you cannot forfeit your salvation. I want to make this very clear. You can't lose your salvation like you lost your watch. You're like, oh my gosh, where's my watch? I can't find it anywhere. That's not what it's referring to. You can't lose your salvation. That doesn't make any sense. But you can forfeit your salvation. You can then willfully deny the Lord. Say, I don't want anything to do with you. And this is what these people are doing with animal sacrifices. This is why it says right here. It says right here in verse 18 of chapter okay, I lost it now. Where am I? Oh, okay, guys, I'll be honest with you. I don't know what I just did. Oh my gosh, I messed everything up now. What did I just do?
20 minutes later.
And what does it say right here if we go up? I will remember their sins and their lawless deeds no more. Where there is forgiveness of these, there is no longer any offerings for sins. You see the point that I'm making? This whole context again is about offerings of sins. So what are they doing? They're deliberately going out doing offerings of sins, knowing that Jesus Christ is our eternal offering. But they neglect that because they want to do the things of the former days, doing animal sacrifices for their sins. I don't know why they want to do it exactly, but they want to go back to the old days. Maybe they felt more comfortable. Maybe they felt less persecuted. As a matter of fact, that's most likely what it is. Because what happens when you become enlightened with the word of truth? You are persecuted. You have to endure. You go through hard sufferings, struggles, sometimes being publicly exposed and afflictions, and sometimes being partnered with those who treaded. For you had compassion on those in prison. You were sent to prison. You were joyful, and you joyfully accepted the plundering of your property, since you knew you yourself had a better possession and an abiding one. So you see, actually, in context, you can see why these people would want to go back to basically the fallen belief of Judaism, because it was a struggle for them. It was a struggle for them. So you just see that throughout chapter 10 and chapter 11, it clearly shows that these people were believers but fell out of grace. They left the faith. They left the sanctity of the Lord for their former ways, which caused them to forfeit their salvation. So again, for my OSAS brothers, stop using this to prove that OSAS is true, because the moment you do that, you fall into many hermeneutical problems. And it messes with your soteriology as well. So don't use Hebrews chapter 10. Don't use Hebrews chapter 11, because it basically cooks your entire belief in OSAS. I love you guys. You're my brothers in Christ. But you need to see the obvious. You can forfeit your salvation. You can't lose it, because it doesn't make any sense. When are you going to lose that salvation? Obviously, you don't literally lose that salvation, but there is a point where you will say, I want nothing to do with God. I want to go back to my former ways. I want to go back to my lustful ways, my drunken ways, something, hateful ways, lying ways, I want to worship my old gods or whatever it may be. You want to fall out of grace. You want to be an apostate. And when you do that, there is no longer a sacrifice that remains of sin for you. The eternal sacrifice of Christ is no longer binding on you. And all you'll have to face is a hellfire. So yeah, that's basically it. I hope you guys could understand where I'm coming from. I hope you guys could understand what the Word of God says, and that you can come closer to the truth of the gospel. So yeah, I love you. I love you all. I love all my brothers in Christ. I hope you enjoyed the video. YouTube algorithm is going to suggest a video for you that you're probably going to like. It's going to be on maybe this side or that side. You're going to see it. But anyways, like and subscribe, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and Christ bless all of you. Have a nice day.